Hi everyone, I hope you guys are okay. So it's the end of day 3 of the Cheltenham Literature Festival, and because I've got a bit of time on my hands because I've managed to finish a bit early today, I wanted to do this video that I mentioned in my previous video of something that I wanted to do because of something that I saw in Oxford. It's actually something that I've been meaning to talk about as well for a while, not just this exhibit, but what's relating to this exhibit. I've wanted to do a video for a while and I just kind of put it off and put it off and put it off, and I've never actually got around to doing it, and it's a bit of a shame. So I thought now, because I want to talk about this exhibit, I might as well talk about this subject at the same time. And the subject is J.R.R. Tolkien. I have loved Tolkien since I was a child. It was my dad. My dad's a huge fan of Tolkien, and he was the one that really introduced Tolkien's world to me. I adored Hobbiton as a child. I wanted to live there. I remember hearing the descriptions of the land and almost feel like I could feel the grass kind of between my toes and imagine myself running down the hill and visiting all the little, like, the pub and such, and through the streets, and seeing the firework display that Gandalf brings to Hobbiton at the beginning of Lord of the Rings to celebrate Bilbo's birthday. It's very interesting. I started on the Lord of the Rings first. I remember, or at least having knowledge of the Lord of the Rings first, because I think it was Hobbiton. It was the Hobbits that really caught my attention. Of course, Hobbiton and the Hobbits are in The Hobbit, which is the book before the Lord of the Rings, because of Bilbo and all that lot. But I really connected with Frodo and Sam. And because I had that connection, that was my focus. And it was only after I knew the story of the Lord of the Rings that I kind of went, oh, there's this other book in the background, sort of in the back, or at least in the background of my head, called The Hobbit, that came first. And so I then learned about The Hobbit. But yeah, I've always had a great love for Tolkien. It just brings out, or at least brings me back so clearly to my childhood, and it just makes me think of childhood events, but also that story, even though it's full of darkness and conflict, and we lose friends and all that lot through it, I just feel pure joy in my heart and my soul. I just remember pure happiness and fun, and having living as a child and having having that carefree existence where the only thing that mattered was that day and what I was playing at that moment in that day, kind of thing. Just if someone says the Lord of the Rings or Hobbit or J.R.R. Tolkien or anything like that, I'm instantly back there as a child, like having tea parties in the back garden with my sister and our mum, playing with dolls and stuff like that, or doing some other things like skating or some riding bikes, stuff like that. It just propels me back there, because of the time that was around the time that I got introduced to Tolkien. And yeah, I would give anything to go to New Zealand to see the Hobbit holes and all that lot that's there. And my mum and dad has said to me, go, you can afford it, go, but I wouldn't. I'm like a hobbit in that I'm quite a countryman. I can't. I'd need to go with somebody. I couldn't go that far away from home on my own. I know that may sound a bit weird, but it's just the way I am. I'm very much, there's this moment with Sam I absolutely love in the Lord of the Rings film, and Sam stops when Frodo carries on walking, and Frodo realises he's alone and turns around and he says, why have you stopped? And he went, if I take one step further, it's the furthest from home I've ever been. And Frodo kind of goes back and puts his arm around him and he said, well, come on, and they step across that line together, and it's a really beautiful moment. But while last weekend my family were in Oxford, my mum and dad took me and my sister to an exhibit. Now, it's an exhibit they had already seen because they had gone for like a dry run, as it were, of our trip to Oxford a week or two before. So they knew kind of, where we were staying and all that lot, so we'd know, various things. And they said, there's a Tolkien exhibit, and if we're able to go, because we got there the day before the wedding, we'll go to it. And we got there, we had a few hours to look around before we checked into our hotel. And we went, and it is at the Bodleian Library. That is how you say it, Bodleian. I double checked because I wasn't sure. But basically, it's a free exhibit, so that's why I can even show you to my ticket, because it's not like got my bank details or anything on it. You're given a ticket for a half an hour slot. The room, it's all in one room, and there's room for about 100 people. So if it's busy, like when my mum and dad went, it's a case of you have to queue up, and it's one person out, one person in situation. So you might have to hang around for a while. But luckily when we went, it was Friday about 2 o'clock in the afternoon or something. Oh no, sorry, it was maybe about 1ish. Oh, actually, my ticket says 12:30 to 1. There you go. It was that time slot. There was no queue at that time, so we were just able to go straight through. And so you've got a half-hour slot to go in. It's totally free. The rules are no food, no drink, no photography, no filming, that kind of thing. And you go in, and it was extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. It's all in one room. It's quite darkly lit because obviously, to protect the drawings and paintings that they have of Tolkien's work, they can't have too much exposure to the light, else they'll be affected, of course. So it's quite it's not dark, but it's quite dimly lit, and you have all around you all of these cases, and in the cases there's his paintings of Middle Earth, his drawings, his writing. And I was completely fangirling. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There were also things like his pipes. There is his writing desk. There's his writing chair. There were all of when you go in, because you can follow it round. You take whatever path you want to, because there's just cabinets of all of these things all around the place, so you can wander it free well. It's not like you have to follow a rope, kind of area. But when you go in, directly to your left-hand side, there's like a wall of books, and these are all like first edition copies, or very close first edition copies of all the different versions of his books, including international texts of his books and film versions and such. And they had the ones that I've got with the film covers and everything, and I was like, oh, they're all there. There are letters that he wrote, letters he received. The one letter that I just adored was from a man called Sam Ganji, and he was saying about how his family were reading the book, or his friends, and as soon as they came across the name Sam Gamgee, they were all kind of were in complete shock that Tolkien's kind of borrowed his name and such, and so he wrote to Tolkien, and Tolkien was so happy with his letter. He replied back and sent signed copies of the Lord of the Rings trilogy to him. There's also famous people who wrote to him whose letters are on display, including like Iris Murdoch, Joni Mitchell, and Terry Pratchett. It was extraordinary. And when you like I said, there's sort of you can go about however you like, but it's sort of flat bang in the middle, there is this giant 3D map, and on it, it basically shows you on this 3D map the route that every single person, or I'd say person, every single member of the Fellowship takes in the Lord of the Rings. And there's also a version of it that's just on a screen if there's too many people around the 3D map, or if you just want to look at the screen, there's a screen there. There's such a wonderful array of things. There's so many maps. They have, this is a bookmark that I actually bought, but I want to show you the bookmark because it's probably easier to view. But you can see that this is an example of his doodles. He would literally get the paper, read it, and then start doodling. And look at that! Isn't that stunning that he would do that? He always had, coloured pens to hand and all this lot, and you couldn't stop his imagination. That one thing that I just, oh god, it was so bizarre to see, was, well, I'll say two things, but the thing that came to mind when I said that was, there is a book of his letters that he wrote to his children as Father Christmas. He wrote one to them every year, and Father Christmas would basically tell them what had been happening over the year, in the North Pole and everything, and his adventures with the polar bear who did very naughty things. Like one time he got himself into a really nice lovely hot bath, but he left the tap running, and so it flooded the place, and then he opens a door, and from what I can recall, this last bit, he leaves a door open and the water freezes, so he's made himself a skating rink in the bathroom, and and rather than taking responsibility, because the polar bear never takes responsibility for what he does, he's just put on skates and he's like, what? He's just skating around, and my mum and dad gave me a copy of that book. They've still got it. I didn't bring it with me when I moved out of their house, but they still got it, and inside is copies of the letter, and they're fully in envelopes for you to take out and read. There's the original printed, and then on the back has got the translation, because some of it, as he gets older, in order to show that, and the kids get older, in order to show that Father Christmas is getting older, his writing gets really shaky, and they had them on display. But another thing that just sent a chill down my spine, because I couldn't believe I was viewing it, is the original artwork that he did for the cover of The Fellowship of the Ring. And it's basically a view of mountain. If you had it so that your book was open flat, obviously upside down so you could see the cover, it's mountain ranges in front of you, in white, blue, grey and green. And there's a sun and there's a dragon, and everything. And it actually is the original one. And you can see where he's drawn all the lines for where the spine would be, where each sides are. He actually forgot to add his name to the cover. He was so focused on getting the art right, he forgot his name. And there is a note, because he wanted the sun and the dragon, to be red, and the publishers knew that would be too expensive, and there's a publisher's note written on the side of it that says "no red" underlined, and it's just extraordinary to see that, and seeing things where he's written and he's editing himself, and he's throwing in extra words. He even did this thing where, in the Mines of Moria, there's this whole thing about how they find, when they go through the Mines of Moria, they find all that the dwarves have been killed and such, and there's been a horrific battle, and there is a book that basically dictates what happened with this battle, what happened with the, to the dwarves and such. And the way that Tolkien described it, it's, bits of it as almost like they've got burnt holes through it. It's breaking up, it's crumbling. And he actually took pieces of paper and wrote the full Dwarvish, because he invented languages. He invented all these different languages that are used in Lord of the Rings. He wrote it the Dwarvish, and then he treated the paper, and he burnt it, and he crumpled it, and he made it, dried it out as much as possible to show what he wanted it to be like for the publishers and such, in the hope that they would do something with it, but they didn't. But it is there in the archive, and they had it out on display. It was beautiful. It's such a shame, though, that his family, when it came to it, that they were going through his stuff after his death, they threw away so much stuff, including his manuscripts, because they thought no one would be interested, it'd be of no importance. So there is a lot of stuff that sadly have been destroyed, but of what the archive, what the library have got, is absolutely exquisite. The exhibition in Oxford, it ends on the 28th of October. It's then going to New York. I don't know whereabouts in New York, what library, what museum, whatever, or how long it's going to be there. But the guy who is in the room, kind of like a security guy, and now who talks to the various people, he was speaking to me and my mum, and he was saying it'll probably be a couple of years before it comes back here. It's back to Oxford. So if you're able to see this and you're a Tolkien fan, go to see it. You will not be disappointed. Now, just to show you kind of how much I am a Tolkien fan, for a start off, of course, I've got the Lord of the Rings trilogy. As you can see, it's rather worn. Look at those beautiful broken spines. And The Hobbit as well. I absolutely love all of the books. I think the thing about Tolkien as well just came to mind, holding those books, is about the coming together to defeat evil, that you can change the world, and even if you're the smallest person in the world, it's about love and respect and honor and beauty. And also it looks at the bad side, it looks at temptation, obsession, addiction and such, but there's always a light on the horizon, and the fight against evil, we've got to unite for it. It's extraordinary. I've got some pop vinyl dolls. My absolute favourite, Smaug. I love Smaug from The Hobbit. Isn't he cute? Oh, I just love him. But I've also got Frodo and Sam, my two guys, my two favourite hobbits. Sam is my absolute favourite. Frodo wouldn't have got anywhere without his Sam. It's so totally true. Sam is such an exquisite character for Tolkien to have written. He's wonderful. And of course, I have to have a baddie. I've got a Nazgul. I've got one of the 9, and I absolutely love him. I think he's wonderful. I've also got, for the making of the films, I've got various things here. I have got the actual official movie guides, the collector's hardback editions for each of the trilogy that I got as various Christmas and birthday presents when the films came out. I remember I went to each and every one of them on the day they came out, and everything with my mum, dad, and my sister. For The Hobbit, I've got a couple of the Chronicle collection books as well, and obviously for various films, I've got, for the wonderful Peter Jackson films, which I adore. There's the theatrical trilogy of The Hobbit. There is the theatrical trilogy of The Lord of the Rings. There is the extended trilogy of The Hobbits. There is the extended trilogy of The Lord of the Rings. And I also got, this film version, this animated film version from the 1970s. My dad introduced me to this as a kid, and I distinctly remember watching it, and I absolutely love love this version, even though sadly, because their plan was to make two films, make the trilogy into two films, so the first film covers 1.5 books and the second one would cover the other 1.5 books. Sadly, they didn't get their funding to make the second film, which is so sad. But I would definitely recommend any fan of Tolkien to check out this version. I love it. Okay, they pronounce some things wrong, and okay, there's some of the voices aren't that great. Just because it was of its time, that would be so some lines that are said in my opinion a bit kind of throwaway. Not these are actually really important lines for the story, but that's just my opinion, kind of thing. Whereas I don't know if because of at the time, because they was kind of, we haven't got much money, we'll take that line, that's fine. Whereas nowadays, obviously, like if you look at, say, like a Pixar film or something, they say every line about 15 times until they decide which one is perfect for the tone that they want, and then they go on into the next line and such. So it could be a budget thing or whatever, but this is just, Sunday afternoons curled up in the living room watching an animated film in my childhood. I love it. And Sam in this is absolutely brilliantly animated. He's wonderful. He does look a bit like a potato, but but he's absolutely brilliant. And for radio, the absolutely stunning Lord of the Rings radio collection, where Ian Holm plays Frodo, and in the Peter Jackson films he plays Bilbo. Old Bilbo in the Lord of the Rings one, because obviously the Hobbit one is played by Martin Freeman, because he's much younger. He's like 60 years earlier. But this is astonishing bit of radio, and it is so true to the books, and it's so powerful, and it's so wonderful. And this is actually, I really love this CD collection. You get a really great booklet with it. You get a whole fold out map of Middle Earth, and each of these discs, I'll show you. Ooh, gosh, if I can get one out, are gold. They're gold rings. And there's a special bonus disc just of the score, because the score is wonderful in this collection. It's absolutely great. And there is a Hobbit drama as well. Now this is really interesting, because the BBC did this drama. Then the drama fell out of their archive. They were like, oh, damn it. Because, what are we going to do? Because we've got, the Lord of the Rings one that's brought out. We can't find a Hobbit. So a kind of an appeal went out for people who, at the time, it illicit, because it would have been on the radio, it would be cassettes and stuff like that. And they're very, very lucky, because one person managed to record it via cassette and sent them their copy and said, this is what I've got. And they used the tape copy to import it straight onto digital version, and they produced a CD from it. So the quality isn't that strong in obviously comparison to modern day drama or even this one, but it's still a good, decent recording of The Hobbit. So yes, you can get this one as well. So yeah, that's kind of like this. That's my Lord of the Rings Tolkien Hobbit collection stuff. I did buy some things at the museum whilst I was there, so I got put some pop vinyls on the floor so I can get to my stuff. They have made these wonderful postcards made up of 12 parts of the exhibit, which includes, the copy of the original artwork. This is the one I was talking about, the landscape and everything. All of these wonderful pieces that are on display for you to view. The lovely, the drawing of eagles, the paintings, his drawings that he's done straight from scratch. Lake Town, it's little Lake Town in The Hobbit. Each of these, I was just squealing when I saw this. Oh my God, was beautiful. I just stood and stared at this for probably about 3 or 4 minutes while we were there. I just the boldness of the color, the sweeping of the pass. Oh God, it is stunning. This, it's just, as you can see, it's just a Hobbiton across the water. It just, oh, it gave me goosebumps. And next to it was the drawing of Smaug. But with all of his artwork, it was just absolutely extraordinary to see it there in the flesh. And you can see all of his little notes that he's written to himself, and this gave me goosebumps as well. This is the map basically to the Lonely Mountains that the dwarves have to tell them how to get in the Hobbit. And these rooms, they can only be seen under the moonlight on a certain day, which they take to Lord Elrond to read. And there's the final view there. This is Rivendell. The view of Rivendell, which is absolutely beautiful. So I got these postcards. I got another separate postcard because I absolutely loved it. It was a map of Middle Earth, one of the smaller maps of Middle Earth. I got that postcard that I showed you, but I also got something else, which I strongly recommend to anyone. This wonderful book, Tolkien, Maker of Middle Earth, is the book that accompanies the exhibit. This is the paperback version, which was £25. There is a hardback version available as well, which is like £40 or 45, I can't remember which. And then there's a special edition of the hardback, which it's kind of like boxed up, and I think it might have a couple of extra bits to it, but it's actually been personally signed by Tolkien's daughter as well, and that was well over £200. But this exquisite book contains so much information. There's so much artwork. There's how he's actually developed. This was on display. I couldn't believe this was him trying to figure out the 5 different languages for elves, and you can see all of his notes about it. It has information all about languages and everything. His various artwork, his inspirations, because it obviously goes back to things like, because he was obsessed with Vikings and the Eowyn and Eomer and stuff, and Théoden, and such a very Viking inspired, and how they link. This is one of the pieces, one of the drawings from the Christmas book I mentioned. See there, and yes, you can see the polar bear is having some fun at the top there, but the vividness of the colours are absolutely extraordinary. And to see little personal things like the chair that he wrote in, the desk that he wrote at, the different pipes that he had, pictures, personal pictures and everything. It's wonderful. And that is one of the most extraordinary things I've ever seen in my life. This letter, I know I can't really see it very well, but this letter is probably, that envelope is probably about life size. Perhaps it's a little smaller. And this is him writing to his father, this 3-page letter, and through the envelope and everything, that says, "To dear Daddy from Roland from February 14th, 1896, with joined up handwriting and everything, from when he was 3 years old." How is a 3-year-old written a 3-page letter in joined up handwriting and everything? And it's on display, and it's so beautiful. But there's stuff, there's Edith's picture as well, his wife. There's so much interesting stuff, like letters that he wrote to like C.S. Lewis and stuff like this is on display. But where is it? There it is. That's his actual chair and his desk, which are on display. They also have his robes pictured in this book. His robes weren't on display in the room, but they had one room. So I wonder if it's a case of that this book also shows other things in the archive. So, for example, there's a picture of Tolkien in his D-lit gown, and there's the actual gown on the mannequin. Both, that wasn't on in the display, but it is there in the book. So this is absolutely jam-packed with so much information, things to help you understand this. Where is it? Oh, no, I thought I saw something. When I was explaining about the book in the Mines of Moria that are all written and they've got holes and it's like, these are the actual ones, and they're on display all side by side, and that he wrote out, and then he started ripping and burning and treating to make it so that the publishers knew what he wanted, to understand what he felt it should be. But the more I read this, the more I feel I understand his connection to the Vikings and old legends and language, and he was just an extraordinary person. I see Tolkien in a different light now. Okay, this is going to sound a bit bizarre, but I'm going to say it. It kind of felt like all of my life when I've been reading Tolkien, he's been like a faraway figure. When I went to that exhibit, he was a person that was physically there in front of me, it felt like. I know, like, say, for example, you know how I love J.K. Rowling? Because she's, she's with social media, and everything that we have, because tweets and all that lot, it always feels like she's a presence, she's right there. So when you get someone like Tolkien, who all of my life has been this legendary figure for me, who created these characters who I adore, but I've never been able to I can learn facts about him, but I can't connect to him. And slap bang in that moment, as soon as I stepped in and I saw that artwork and I saw his desk and I saw his chair, he was real. And it's like when you're a child and you learn about Father Christmas and you believe, you get that thing, that he's real when you're little. And in that moment, I knew he was real, this legendary figure in my life. I knew he was. Why am I getting emotional? I'm actually getting emotional saying that. But yeah, I was fangirling the hell out of that exhibit, and oh my god, I'm getting upset. It meant a lot. So thank you to the library for giving me that. Yeah, I'm going to stop now because I'm crying. But if you are able to go see it, please do. It is extraordinary. As I said, it is there until 28th of October. Sorry, I'm getting so upset. It's there until the 28th of October. Then it moves to New York. I don't know where in New York. I don't know how long it'll be there. But the guy said it'll probably be a couple of years before it comes back to Oxford. But if you're able to get it, if you're able to read any of his works, if you're able to get hold of this, pick up these books, go to this exhibit, learn about this extraordinary man, and have a great time. Alright, I'm going to stop there and have a little weep. But thanks for watching. And if you have any thoughts, then leave me a comment. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.